back in open session. I think that's how long people coming.
Hi, Glenn.
Hey, how you doing? Y'all are pretty quick this time.
We're quick.
Well,
We didn't have a quorum until like 10
oh really?
10 minutes ago. It's really annoying.
Good.
And I got here early.
That's always the way it is when you do something like that, you know.
Chris. Natalie. Skips a generation.
I'm about to, do we, Dr. Postaway, do we want to go ahead and start? I know Straubs is coming, but we have to take action on
You have 5 members here.
Do we have 5?
You do.
Yes, we do. Okay, so he'll be here, he's coming, but so our 3 board members, we need to actually adopt the agenda. We didn't before.
Move to adopt the agenda as written.
Okay, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, and we need a motion to approve the minutes from the committee of the whole meeting of July 17th.
Move to approve as written.
Second.
Okay, any corrections or additions? Okay, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Okay. Then we have a recommendation on grade configuration for,
Move to approve.
okay?
Can we just,
Yeah, so we have a motion and a second discussion.
this is for the 9th and 10th grade?
Yes, to open with 9th and 10th grade, okay? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right, CCSD strategic plan update. Floor is somebody else's.
Oh,
Quick, we got
Mike.
here very quickly. So board members, you need the folder that you brought with you from executive session. This is the folder that has strategic planning materials in it and some information regarding the map scores that we didn't have available when we published the agenda. So we're going to start with this agenda, sort of just go over if we can. Does everyone have the folder, and inside it you see an agenda? We're going to walk through the main parts of the slides, the main parts of the strategic plan, and then spend some time with you today processing 2 things. So what we want to do today, as you see, I'm looking at this slide deck, which will soon be displayed. Pretty soon for display to have a rear view. And I'm flipping to the second slide. So today we want to share with you the high-level findings from many, many listening sessions that we had throughout the summer, and some feedback that we developed last spring before the formal listening sessions. And then we want to share how what we heard has influenced our thinking about the strategic plan. So we'll share the mission, vision, values with you, and then reflecting and acting on the next steps that we will take to engage a lot of community members across various cultures and positions in working on the 3 to 5 year timeline that we'll have for developing our strategies. At the end of that, we want to share with you our goals for the 2017-18 school year. That are those that we brought to you when we developed the budget, plus those that we have added since we had conducted the listening sessions and had a little more time to work more deeply and reflect with staff. That's basically what we'll do. I will start by reviewing the main themes that we heard from the listening sessions. Now, Erica Taylor will follow up with you and the public in a great deal more detail to share what we heard, what we learned, and actions we've taken. So this is very high level. So the first big takeaway is this. The data, no matter which yardsticks are used, are clear. Despite much hard work and well-intentioned effort by principals, teachers, and staff, far too many of our students are not being educated to the level to which we all aspire. The system, that is the way we are organized, our policies, our procedures, our protocols, simply is not effectively reaching all of our children. So that's the first big acknowledgement. Secondly, our value add, what Charleston County Schools does for the greater community is ensuring that you leave our system well prepared for careers, for further education, and for citizenship. It's at odds with many aspects of the way that we're organized that's related to the first bullet. And the third, despite lots of different efforts, the district is not effectively engaging and communicating with all employees, students, parents, and other stakeholders. It's not for lack of trying, but universally people are saying, I didn't know how to make a difference, I didn't know how to get input, I didn't know when this decision was coming up. And I have really deep, passionate feelings about these things. Fourth, the decision-making responsibilities, roles, processes, and opportunities for input aren't clear. There's a lot of confusion about where decisions are made, how they're made, and when a decision becomes final and actionable. Fifth, the cultural norms, structures, and policies that support continuous improvement processes are essential to adult student and growth, but they're not clear in our system. When we have uncertainty and doubt about the expected outcomes and the evidence that will be gathered to gauge progress, that reduces trust and it inhibits learning. And we've seen that happen because we weren't clear about what the outcomes were, how they would be measured, and what those measurements would mean to students and the adults who support them. And finally, we must move forward with an abiding focus on what is best for each child. Without this, systems and processes tend to be adult-centered instead of student-centered. Student-centered systems and processes lead to equity in addressing children's needs. So those things were in our minds as we began going back and looking at the plan that we presented, that you'll recall was kind of in 6 big boxes, and asking ourselves whether we had truly put students at the center of the enterprise. So I'm going to turn it over to Michelle now, who's going to talk about the goals that emerged.
Good afternoon, everyone. In listening to our stakeholders, we all must agree that it is important to place our students at the center of each goal. So while reflecting and learning our goals, goal number 1, we must place students at the center of all that we do. Indeed, they must become the heart of the transformed system. 2, we must significantly improve the support that we provide to our principals and teachers. 3, our people are our most important asset. We must implement a best-in-class system for attracting, developing, and retaining top talent. 4, we must redesign our systems and processes to be highly effective in a student-centered environment. 5, we must create and nurture a supportive and inclusive learning culture. 6, we must adopt a proactive communications approach, eagerly seeking input and clearly and transparently sharing information in a variety of ways to all internal and external stakeholders. And last, we must establish measures and means for regularly assessing programs on all fronts with clearly identified targets to guide decisions. As you will see, we have spelled out with students as the center of each of our goals.
Good afternoon. I get to talk about the next 2 slides. If you would look at the visual, go to the very center of that image, and you'll see students at the very center, the heart of our work. So our goal, our core business, is to equip students for college, career, and citizenship. But for us to do that, we have to have some supports in place. So if you move to the outer circle, you can see principals, teachers, and staff. The literature on educational effectiveness is really clear. That teacher, a high-quality teacher in every classroom every day, that's one of the most important variables for student success. The second individual in an organization that's next in importance, next to the teacher, is the principal. That principal is a key. The principal is the enabler, providing the conditions for student success, providing the conditions for teacher success, and then staff. If you move to the yellow band, we can draw upon business and industry and the research on educational organizations and what they have in common when they're highly successful. They start with culture and climate. What are the conditions in the environment that lead to success? How do you establish high expectations? How do you shape the culture you want rather than dealing with the culture you have? Move around the circle and you go to talent acquisition, development, and retention, and that makes sense given what we know about the effectiveness in regards to the role of the teacher, the role of the principal, and the role of staff. And then move to systems and processes. Systems and processes have to be explicitly clear, they have to be well defined, and an organization's job is to make sure they're replicable. What do you need to do to make sure you take that across a system to scale? It's not good enough to have islands of excellence. How do you really think about scaling that and impacting the entire system? And then finally, you've got communication. Communication, 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 communication. I've never worked in any organization where communication wasn't targeted for improvement, whether it was a mid-sized school system, a really large school system, or even if it's a small school system or a unit within a school system. Communication can always be improved. So I think as we work through our strategic plan and we work through the rest of our presentation here, you're going to see strategies for really improving in this area. How do you develop communications plans? How do you make sure that the message gets out? And how do you have two-way feedback? Communication is not just one way, it's two ways. If you go to the next slide, again, we're reminded that business, industry, educational literature, continuous improvement science are all very explicit in the role of mission, vision, values. Those are the rudder in which an organization is steered. So if you have those clearly defined, you know who you are, you know what you value as an organization, and you know where you're going. So students at the heart of our work, our mission is to educate and support every child in achieving college, career, and citizenship readiness. And then our vision, CCSD is a premier school system in which every child is supported in and out of school. Every child succeeds academically. Every child graduates from high school prepared for employment in the modern workforce or post-secondary degree or credential completion, and every student, teacher, principal, and staff member is valued and respected with the opportunity to learn every day. Sometimes the leaders in educational circles call that systems coherence. Michael Fullen calls it systems coherence, and that means an alignment not just in processes and procedures, but an alignment of the heart and mind.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to put that aside for a minute. You have another piece of paper that has a colorful tree at the bottom of it. So in a good lesson, you've been sitting and listening for the last couple minutes. And so as teachers, we know it's time for student interaction, or in your case, adult interaction. And in a minute, we're going to talk about the values that support our strategic plan.
Should be underneath.
But before we do that, just like we would do in a classroom, we try to build some context to make it relevant for the people that are participating. So first, we're going to do a little bit of an activity here around a protocol to talk about our individual values, what we as individual stakeholders in this bigger plan really value. You're going to get a chance to work with your table group around this activity. So a protocol, for those of you that aren't familiar with it, a protocol is a very structured format that groups use so that every stakeholder, every participant gets to have input and output in what's happening. We use it in the classrooms, we use it in our teams, businesses use it, it's used all over the place. These protocols help us ensure that all the voices are heard, which is part of the communication issues that we've been hearing. So we want to ensure in this group, they'll give everybody a chance to have participation and to get to hear from other people. Okay, so
The protocol is structured like this, and there are lots of them that you can choose from. We chose this one. This is a read, reflect, share protocol. Now it says compare. We're actually, for time's sake, not going to do that part of this protocol. We're going to do the first 3 parts of it. So the first part is there's a common reading assignment for you. 2 paragraphs there about our values. So I'm going to give you 1 minute to read that, and when you're finished, if you look up, and we'll know it's time to move on. So now we've taken a look at our individual values, that in a small group of people that we work with in the name of CCSD. Now we're going to switch a little bit, and we're going to take a look at the values that undergird the plan that we're going to take a look at today. So Jeff's going to talk a little bit about those values. Thank you for following protocols.
Who's got the clicker?
They got Maggie.
Maggie's got the clicker. Maggie, you ready?
Ready.
Click away.
All right.
So, I get the opportunity to talk about the values that have been developed so far, and these came out of group discussions that we've had over the past year and a half. And there's 6 of them listed here. Any good strategic plan is based on a good sense or a good set of values. As you may have seen, at least I saw in our group, each person came up with a different value that was most important. So having more than one value is something that is probably needed, even though there is a lot of overlap between each of the items that's listed here. What's interesting about the way these are listed up here right now is that it begins and ends with the kids. And when you look at it, really all of them are about the kids, but the first one is about service. In any great business, it's about customer service. In the military, it's about the mission and the people we support in that mission. And certainly in the school district, it's about the children that are out there. And it's that selfless support for those kids and all of us that support those children. Integrity, again, a number of words were bounced around in our group that could be interchanged with this word, whether it be honor, ethics, etc. But it is being fair and consistent and truthful in everything that we do. And as we've seen in any number of articles in our friendly neighborhood media, there are many instances across not only our state but our country of the inability to follow this and allow that organization to succeed by doing that. So this is very important to us. Inclusiveness, treating everybody with dignity and respect. We all come from different backgrounds. We all come from different places. We all have a different experience in our past history, and we can bring those to the table to the benefit of the district if we're included in those conversations. Equity, we've certainly seen that across the district where we haven't been able to get to every single child and every single school in some cases. And that equity isn't about giving everybody the same thing. We have a baseline for providing assets and resources, but there are times when, again, because just like ourselves, we have a different background, we're from different places, we have to do something above and beyond to ensure certain students have that equity by giving them something different. So it's a fine balance. Collaboration, Cindy talked about communication, and this is really at the heart of collaboration. It's not making our decisions in a silo. It's about interacting with the entire district, interacting with our schools, interacting with the public, and making sure we collaborate and take as many of the ideas and bring those forward to be evaluated and put into action. And finally, as I mentioned, excellence goes back to what we're delivering to our students in the field, and that's data-based. You know, one of the things that we need to take a harder look at, and we're beginning to take a harder look at, is how successful are we? What measures our success? And we need to make sure that those decisions are student-centered, data-informed, evidence-based, and I know we're on the right track to do that. But that'll allow us to continue on with the successful programs and make changes where things need to be made. Changes need to be made if they're not as successful with the decisions that have been made in the past. So there's the 6 values, and certainly the input that we'll gather today, we'll take a look at that and see if we need to make any adjustments based on what was said here earlier. All right, next slide. I think we got Joe Williams. All right.
All right, so when you start speaking about values, you always want to, those are those things that are important to you. So when you think about values, think about, okay, now that we have the value systems in place, you know, how do we accomplish these things? You know, what do we do to ensure that the things we feel are important are being fulfilled? And so that leads to our strategies. We started out with the 6 big boxes like we mentioned earlier, and I don't know if you all remember the big six. We had teaching and learning, improving. We had supporting learning. We had managing resources, communicating, and community priorities. And I have a relative of mine that says, you need to come back to the world. So we had to come back to the world because we were really out there, thinking so strategically about what it is we want to accomplish that we forgot that one important thing that we've heard a number of times, and it was the kids, the students, the scholars, whatever you may want to call them. And so we realized that we needed to make every single strategy, centered around our scholars. So what we're about to share with you, Kim and myself, are our revised strategies that centers around our scholars. So our first one is to provide learning experiences that allow every scholar to master essential academic content and skills to be career and college ready. And you start thinking about some of the things that we're doing, like top talent, our literacy supports, and our math supports, just to give you a few examples.
Yeah, the second one of the things we discussed in our group was hard work as a value, and this is where the work takes place. And number 2, provide learning environments that allow every student to develop and demonstrate talents, interests, and modern workplace skills. That would include things like new tech, early college, high school, just to give a couple of examples.
Number 3, provide a safe, supportive, and inclusive environment for every student and adult in the system. We read a book earlier this year, and we spoke about the fact that when you don't feel safe, your output will be minimal. So we know that's very important, and we start thinking about some of the things that we have in place, like PBIS, the SEL curriculum, and also our PDP as a few examples.
The next one is really should be a national strategy, because with the shortage of teachers, it's just imperative that we implement some type of pipeline that recruits and sustains, supports, retains teachers and principals in all the schools that we have. Some of the things that are going on right now are top talent. We have teacher development. So those are a couple of things.
Probably the one that's nearest and dearest to Glenn's heart,
Yep.
Align resources.
You got that one right.
To address student or scholar needs. And one of the biggest things I can think of when I think about that one is our allocation committees that we form to make sure that we are doing that.
And the next one is to engage in continuous progress processes to create a system effectiveness in meeting student needs. And one of the things that has really given us a lot of input for these strategies and values, and revisit that, have been the listening sessions, and those have been so powerful to hear from all the different stakeholders. And then we also have the district accreditation coming up, so that'll be something that we dive into deeply.
And the final one is to communicate student or scholar progress, seek feedback, and cultivate family and community partnerships to ensure success for every student or scholar. Again, piggybacking on what Kim just said about our listening sessions that we've been having, we had this past year, and also the cabinets that we're going to be having for the upcoming year. And we do want you to know that although Kim and I are just presenting these to you, we will have a culminating activity where we delve deeper into our strategies later on today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. The next slide has to do with our targets. These are the goals and deliverables, the indicators that we have that we are effective with students, with our personnel, and that the system itself is responding as it should and producing the results that it should. We brought some of these indicators to the board last year. We assume that we move forward with those indicators, but we will be taking this information to each of the 5 or 6 cabinets, advisory cabinets that will be formed. They will go through the same sort of values process that you went through. They'll look at each part of the plan. We'll review the standards with them. They will help develop some indicators that will be brought back to the board for your consideration as you make the final determination about the evidence that we will accept that this district is making a significant contribution to the well-being of the youth of our community. So what are the next steps? If we look at the next slide. For each of these strategies, we will confirm a champion to lead that strategy and then develop work teams for each of the goals under the strategies. Next, with this board, we're going to review the 2017-18 goal deliverables and timelines. The teams that we put in place will help develop the indicators and targets as we've mentioned, and they will establish the 3-year priorities, identifying the resource requirements and the deliverables or outcomes that we'll be shooting for under each of the strategies. So it was necessary, as you know, to put plans in place for this coming year, which we brought to you as part of the 2017-18 budget planning process. And in just a moment, we're going to ask the board to dive deeply into the goals that we set for ourselves for this coming year. But there are still plenty of opportunities for lots of folks to be involved in those 7 different teams that will be working on each one of these strategies to further develop the 3 to 5 year plan and bring it back to the board as we establish the student, teacher, parent, business community, classified staff, cabinets. It will be our expectation that every one of those cabinet members engages in the strategy of Universal as we move forward, and then others would be invited to be included as well. I'd like to look now at a couple of documents that are in your folder. The first document is the strategic planning timeline and stakeholder involvement. There's a lot of confusion about who's been involved or what. So Erica and Havens simply created this document that summarizes for you where we started with the strategic plan and where we've been with it. I'd like to ask you to look at the last page. I'm not going to walk through all of this, you've lived most of it, but at the last page, the bottom note, maybe the bottom 3 bullets. First of all, the listening session will continue. We've learned that there are valuable tools to go around the community and meet with various groups at various times. So those will continue to just be part of the way we do business here. I've talked about the work teams for each strategy that we'll be engaging. And then under that note, I just want to point out that there are 4 different critical efforts underway. And what we have tried to do is to combine these efforts in a way that make things as simple and straightforward as possible for folks at the school level. First of all, the state, I believe in 1997, with the education, whatever act was put in place in 1997, it wasn't the EIA, it was the successor to that, required every district to submit a strategic plan and schools to submit school renewal plans. And that process has been refined a few times along the way. Our strategic planning process was out of sync with what the state required. So Mr. Washington worked with the schools in the district, doing everything that we needed to do to get those plans submitted. But we should not confuse the submission of those plans with this deeper and more authentic strategic planning process that's underway. So the next submission of the school renewal and district strategic plan will align with this strategic plan that's crucial to Charleston County Schools. Also, the principal evaluation system changed significantly this year, so each principal is having to develop a plan of growth and identify various targets for improvement at the school. So that's an effort that's underway. And then, as we mentioned when we started 2 years ago, Charleston School District has never been accredited. So we began a process of accreditation with Advanced Ed, the International Accreditation Agency. Midway into that process, Advanced Ed announced that they were changing their criteria. So the executive director for Advanced Ed, Mark Elgart, came and presented to our principals in January about the new accreditation process. The standards that they've adopted have been shared with us, but they don't become public until October 31st. Is that correct? So we haven't been able to move forward as we would like with the accreditation. So at this point, our priority is to get this strategic plan in place and let it be the glue that holds us all together. And let that be the organizing document that the schools can refer to so that we're not having multiple plans. I just wanted to clarify that for you. Also, next in your packet is through a lot of sessions up to the Board of Education for approval. Once they're approved, they will guide the principals meeting, they'll guide the teachers' professional development, the cabinet action, and other stakeholder cabinets that we'll be working with. It will, the strategic goals and action plans drive our communication and will feed the feedback from our communication loops back into the provisions of the goals. And then finally, in our main functions here at the district office, in finance, human resources, learning services, and operations, our work, in addition to those things we're required to do by law, will be defined and guided by the strategic plan. And that's why getting these goals right this year is really important, because we're aligning our evaluations internally around getting these goals accomplished. So what we'd like to do now is take a little bit for you to examine this multi-page document. It is critically important to this year's operation. We've taken each of the 7 strategies, and beside the strategy, we've just listed the title of the goal. And then I'll just take a look at strategy 1, for example. These are the goals that you've heard about as budget priorities: the phonics pilot, the numeracy curriculum pilot and the math training, the blended learning and adaptive digital content, the expansion of early childhood, and the principal's professional development and support sessions. You didn't hear about that in the budget, but this is where that initiative belongs. So we're not asking you to look yet at the quarterly deliverables. That will come as the next part of our work with our liaisons working with the board officers and chairs in each committee to make sure we get these deliverables lined out right, so that it defines the board's work and it provides the guidelines for us. We know when we report back to the board about the progress we've made or any snags we've hit, so that we don't end up at the end of the year with an intention that's been poorly communicated, misunderstood, and results in a lot of confusion and distrust. So what we'd like you to do is to take 5 minutes, read through just the strategies and the goals, and then we're going to start a round robin where you'll sit where you are, and the staff members who own these strategies, who are responsible for implementing them, will come to the table to discuss them or answer questions in 10-minute segments. So first of all, let's just take 5 minutes for everyone to read through the strategies. And if you're in the audience and don't have a copy, please pull out your chairs and we can share with you. Thank you. So the second part of this, we're rotating among tables. You sit where you are, and if you're at table 1, that would be this table. Right now, for the next 10 minutes, they're going to discuss strategies 1 and 2 and the goals that go with it. And we have Kevin Eakes, Michelle Watson, and Rich Gordon at this table because they own a lot of the responsibility for delivering strategies 1 and 2. At table 2, you're going to start with discussing strategies 3 and 4 with Jennifer Coker and Bill Brickman to help, because they own a lot of the responsibility for delivering 3 and 4. Then table 3, strategies 5, 6, and 7 with Jeff Burrows and Deanne Rose and Erica Taylor. And by the way, everyone, I'd like to introduce you to our new deputy superintendent, Deanne Rose. You'll be hearing more from her this afternoon, but I realized that she stood up to speak. We haven't formally introduced her. So we have 10 minutes for this session, so please put your questions on the table, because again, this converts immediately into our work plans and deliverables and evaluation. So thank you. To our next agenda item is, we'll sort of close out this one by saying the next step for this year's work goals and the work plans is for the committee, the board committee liaisons who are staff members, to sit with the board committee liaisons and officers of the board to look at those quarterly, they're described as deliverables, they're not really deliverables, but they're at the board level. What should be coming to the board? What evidence will you want to see month by month by month in the Strategic Education Committee, the Policy and Personnel Committee, the Operations Committee, and Audit and Finance, that your board meeting generally, that we're making progress on each of these goals, and are there any goals that you feel we have committed. I will tell you, if we put many more goals on, we're gonna have to take something off, because we are at capacity. And if we take anything else on, we're not going to do it well. We are stretched to do these things well, but we think they're all essential. I'd like to invite any staff member who hasn't had an opportunity to speak, to address anything that you think we've omitted from this discussion about where we are with the strategic plan. Okay, just to clarify, the 2017-18 goals, we need to march on. For the 3 to 5 year strategy development, the goal development under each of those 7 strategies, there will still be lots of opportunities for people to participate. So if you hear anyone say they wanted to participate and haven't had their voice heard, please refer them to Erica.
Thank
Erica
you.
is the air traffic controller.
All right.
Good luck with that.
And I'd like to thank the staff. I think this was a really great discussion, and we all learned a lot. It's different from that we sit up there and we sit down here. Thank you.
This is really
Randy
great.
Ambrose is going to share with you the insights report that was validated recently. Today we're sharing the district level data. We won't share the school level data until principals have seen it on a week from Thursday. Is that right, Cindy? All right, you're up.
So I am just delighted. This is my very first committee of the whole meeting. I missed the one in July, but I just want to say that I am delighted to join the Charleston team. I feel very honored and I'm very excited. So what we want to do, if we could look at the goals for this part of the agenda, I want to provide an overview from the NWEA Insights report, and I will never bring you data without bringing you some information on what we're going to do next, because data without any kind of action plans really are not actionable. So I will always bring you some either contextual information or some next steps. I want to share with you briefly about our plans for continuous improvement. I want to examine our current status and identify causes for celebration and opportunities for improvement. And you will see both in this report this afternoon. You will see some clear reasons to celebrate, but you will see some data that are clear. I mean, they will almost just like get right in your face, and you will realize that needs to be our priority. And I put the little OFI there. That's a Baldrige term. It just means it's an opportunity for improvement. And you have to call those out and you have to name them when you see them. I'm going to share a timeline for data analysis and reporting for the 2017-2018 school year. And I thought a great place to start would be to think about measures of academic progress, the MAP assessment, and think about what it is and what it does. So I think we know it's a nationally normed assessment. It creates a personalized assessment experience by adapting to each student's learning level. If Laura Donnelly were to plop laptops in front of us this afternoon and ask us to test, MAP would allow us to go. We were taking the math until we missed. And when we started missing, it would drop down and level, and it's going to find a level on where we are. These assessments are built on a learning progression. So they start down in the primary grades, just think stair step, stair step, stair step, stair step. And you look at that progression, you can tell what comes next. You can tell where gaps are, you can tell what comes next, and it's individualized. So if we sat down 8 weeks later or 12 weeks later and we go to take it again, it's going to start each of us at our own spot. It doesn't start us all the way back at the beginning. It starts where we are on our individual level. It provides essential information on what a student knows and is ready to learn, and over 10 million students and 25,000 schools participate in these assessments. They've been around a long time. They've got a very robust research arm of the organization, and they're constantly trying to improve.
Cindy, is it correct that this is like mandated, not mandated by the state, but we don't choose the achievement growth tool? The state only allows 2 options. So it's not as if you had 100 to choose from. While MAP is one you're talking about, it was one of only 2 you could have used in the district.
So, yes, and so you know that I've recently rejoined South Carolina. I was in South Carolina for most of my career, and I just rejoined.
It is true that there's only 2 we could have chosen from, so it's not as if we decided MAP was the best. We have 2 options only.
In order to receive formative assessment funds from the state for that assessment that offsets the cost, yeah, that's right.
Okay.
We
and
could
math
do
is the
other
one-
testing if we wanted without getting reimbursed.
So we can do other testing, but it would come out of our funds, come out, be taking it away from the classroom.
Exactly.
And in this one of the two is more closely aligned with what we're teaching students.
Their standards, right.
Thank you.
So I debated this slide and whether or not to put it in here, and I will tell you this is the only slide that refers to Lexile levels. It's the only one, but it's an important slide. I pulled this out of my pocket from years and years ago, but I wanted to put it up there because you see two students. You see one working well above level, you see one working well below level, and you see that dotted line, that's accelerated growth. So one of the things Laura Donnelly's team's working on right now, I saw her working on this afternoon with one of her associates, is she's working on pulling our Lexile data. And why is that important? Some of the leading experts on college and career readiness will tell you that the Lexile level is what you can bank on in terms of getting kids ready for college and career. And the reason they believe that is that research over on the left-hand side of that page. We know that to access the SAT, ACT, that's about 1,180 reading level. Citizenship's about at a 1,230 reading level. If you're going to read the newspapers, I think that might be the New York Times actually if I went back in that study. If you're going to vote, if you're going to understand jury processes, that's the reading level that's necessary. And then post-secondary, the first 2 years of college textbooks, a 1,295 reading level to a 1,395. And the surprising thing is that the texts that are the most demanding are the 2-year college texts. HVAC systems, electrical. You ever try to read those manuals? Lexiles are built on sentence complexity, vocabulary, and the third one just has escaped me for the moment. Oh, text complexity, sentence length, and vocabulary. Those are the things that go into a Lexile. So I want you to know that we are going to track Lexiles, and I also wanted to share this image because when we talk about reading achievement and math achievement, I want you to think about these two students and what it's going to take to get them on the trajectory for college and career. All right, this is a slide that I like to use with the board. I also like to use it with principals, and I like to use it inside with the Learning Services core team. And this slide is built on the response to intervention triangle. You've probably seen that working with Jennifer Coker, or you've seen that working with Madeline Jacobs in special education. But the research behind it, if I were to take that and just cut it in half and rotate it and just have a triangle, the research behind it is that about 80 to 90% of the students will be okay with grade level instruction in a typical kind of setting. But you've got students on the far right that are working above grade level or significantly above grade level, and you've got students on the left that are working below grade level or significantly below grade level. And what I've actually done in systems that I've worked in is to ask the research office to scatter plot students. And I actually put a teacher up in front of a board. She taught 6th grade English language arts. She had all her kids scatter plot, and you saw the range that she had to deal with in a day. What I like to do is to really think about, okay, in a classroom you've got all these students. What are you going to do to get core, good solid grade level instruction, and how are you going to differentiate? Because if you do that well, I've seen systems that could exit their students in math or reading at very, very high percentiles. It's core plus differentiation. We're going to think about that a lot and be talking about that a lot this year. So that's kind of like contextual information. Looking at the students tested, this is an important slide because we don't have a lot of administrations of language, and I think we need to just acknowledge that. I don't know what kind of conclusions we can draw from the language results. Even though NWEA put them in there, I think we have to know that that's a caveat we've got to recognize. And then we didn't test that many students in kindergarten reading. So just keep that in mind as we look at these data. So we're going to talk about two things this afternoon, and that's
just clarify. So the language usage is just define that for us.
Language usage would be skills. When I was in school, you had like grammar,
Okay, that's it.
all those pieces. Okay. So we're going to look at achievement and we're going to look at growth. Achievement, what's your status, how you're performing, and what's your growth. And so this is a cause for celebration for us because our reading median achievement is at the 59th percentile, and that means we're better as a district than almost 60% of the districts that administered MAP. So that's a cause for celebration. Now, an interesting thing to me is language usage and math were below the median. I find that interesting because typically a system can move language and math more easily than they can move reading. Reading's a process. You orchestrate all the things you bring to the table, schema, vocabulary, fluency, all those things go into reading. But language and math are content specific. You're teaching, so if you've got room to grow there, you almost always will have a curriculum alignment issue. That's a work out of Fenwick English out of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, if you have any interest in reading that. But the bottom line is, I believe that we can move that on language and math if we get real specific about curriculum. It'll be a journey, it's not going to be a quick fix, but we got some opportunities for improvement there. Looking at growth, that's the 52nd national percentile. That means we grew as well, or better, than 52% of the districts. That's really good. When I started my career, that's what you were aiming for, 50th. 50th or right in that range of slightly above. However, again, we think that is a cause for celebration. We think there's some opportunities for improvement there as well. We think we can beat those odds. And this is not, let me say this again, it will not be a quick fix. It is going to be a journey. We'll make incremental improvements, but we do see some opportunities there. Proficiency and college readiness. The nice thing about that MAP assessment is their research arm will do linking studies to ACT, it will do linking studies to different national assessments, and it will also do studies in correlation with your state assessments. And what NWEA has done is to do those types of studies, and they can project on how well your students are going to perform on the state assessment. Now, we don't have our state assessment data back, but they've projected based on their studies and their research that 50% of our students in ELA will be proficient. 52% in math and 60% in ELA or math. The projected proficiency for math is higher. The college readiness, I asked Laura Donnelly about this. I wanted her to clarify for me, and that's built off of the ACT. So the projections are that 52% will be college ready in ELA, 38% college ready in math, and 55% college ready in ELA or math. I am not a statistician. So at the end, if you have particular questions, Laura Donnelly may be the best person to answer those for you. But I do like data, and I do like continuous improvement processes.
Cindy? I think we just use MAP primarily through the 8th grade. So this is saying to us, not that they're ready when they take the ACT, but when they leave 8th grade,
right.
This is the trajectory that they're on, and we have to continue that journey for at least 2 more years.
That's a really good point. So think about little Juliana and Jaden that were on the slide, and think about where they are. This is showing us that how many students are on that trajectory to be ready.
So is this saying that if we continue the trajectory we're on right now, 52% of our kids that took this test, if they learn on their normal trajectory, will, in the 11th grade, be college ready in ELA?
That's what it says to me.
If
yes,
we want
exactly.
more than them to be college ready, we've got to start growing faster.
Right.
Okay.
They'll be ready if we continue to grow those kids at 1.0 year per year or better.
And the other 48% are not going to be ready if we continue to grow them at 1.0 years.
Or they have to grow at a faster rate.
All right, so this is a look at our longitudinal growth. And NWEA authored these slides. I added little footnotes like achievement versus and growth on there, but this is actually their language. And to me, I don't think it adequately captures what happened between 14-15 and 15-16. 14-15, the growth percentile was average. So they're telling us how we grew compared to all the other districts in their database, and we grew better than 43%. We were at the 43rd percentile. To move from the 43rd percentile, that's really below average, to the 54th percentile in 15-16 is a cause for celebration. That's statistically significant. It's a cause for celebration, and it took great work on the part of our principals and on the part of our teachers in our classrooms. That is a huge cause for celebration. Now you will see 16, 17 is the 52nd percentile. Well, I want to make sure I throw this caveat out there and that we know that. NWEA would not say that's statistically significant. It's just 2 percentile points. And in their data, if you drill down in there, they talk about what is statistically significant and what is not. So the bottom line is we had growth from 14, 15 when we moved into 15, 16, great growth, and we've been able to maintain this last year. So how strong is our growth over time? This is just another way to look at it, and they've broken it out by reading, language usage, math, and then given us a total. But remember the language usage, that was just a small number of administrations, so I don't really think you can draw any conclusions from that. It says our 3-year growth is average relative to national norms. Reading and language usage are consistently average, and math is average with variations across the years. Again, I think we've got some curriculum work inside those data, which is real affirmation for the pilot that we're doing with numeracy. How are district students doing achievement status? This too is a cause for celebration. The fall 2016 achievement scores show a larger proportion of students in the top quartile than national norms. So typically on a distribution, you would expect to see that band that's on the far, when you look at that visual, that band that's on the far left, you would expect to see 25% in the top, 50% in the middle, and then 25% in the bottom.
So that's sort of normal throughout districts all over.
Yep, that's just typical and what would be expected. But if you look, we beat that. We have 33%. We grew the top quartile, a large proportion, 33% there. We've got the middle 2 quartiles. We've reduced that and shifted them up into the top, and then we've reduced that number on the bottom from 25% to 20%. So you can see overall the district, and then you can see reading, the language usage again. I don't think you can draw conclusions from that, and you can see the math. So another cause for celebration. And this is just another way of looking at that. Top quartile students grew slightly faster than the bottom 3 quartile students from fall to spring. So I want you to think about that diamond that we used at the beginning, and think about in a normal, typical distribution, our goal is to get students to grade level. That's our goal, at the minimum goal, right? We want to grow all students, but at the very bottom, at the very lowest part of our expectation is to get them to grade level. So if you look at this slide here, you can see that the top quartile, 56th percentile, is approximately equal to the norm. Middle 2 quartiles, 51st, equal to the norm, and the lowest quartile was a little bit less. So that tells me that I want, as a data team, to dig in those data. Where did we grow students? Where were we successful growing the top quartile? What were those strategies? Where were we successful growing the middle 2 quartiles? What were those strategies? And where were we successful growing the lowest quartile students? Looking at our school data, trying to dig in there, finding the classrooms, finding the schools that did great work so we can replicate those best practices. There's stories in these data. Which subjects are strongest? And this is a really important slide because they've put a quadrant there, and that's important. If you look over on the right-hand side, if you're above that line, that's where they're talking about growth that's above average or slightly above average. So if you walk on the left-hand side of that slide, what they've actually done is take a look at high achievement, high growth. They've looked at high achievement, high growth for reading, high achievement, high growth for math, and high achievement, low growth, and then broken it in language. So let's walk through that. So the district overall, the achievement was 59th percentile, slightly above average. The growth was 52nd percentile, about average. Reading, when they break that down and look at the components, reading high achievement, high growth, 62nd percentile. Again, reading's a process. If we can do that for reading, we should be able to do that for math and for language with some intentional curriculum work. Math, high achievement, high growth, 57th percentile, about average, and then the growth was about 50th percentile, about average. And again, I don't think we can look at the language and really draw any conclusions. So this is information on our schools, and this is a scatter plot. So, and one of the things we'll be doing inside our data team, we'll be looking not only at the math results, but we'll want to look at all data, whether it was a district locally administered assessment, whether it was state data, we're gonna ask these teams to work in reading, work in math, work in science, work in social science, get in there and figure out where these schools fall, to figure out how we can target support and assistance. But you've got 25 schools or 35% working at the high achievement, high growth levels. 7 schools or 10% are at the low achievement, high growth. 9 schools were high achievement, low growth, or 13%, and then 30 schools were low achievement, low growth. And so our job is to get in there in regards to learning services, taking a look at those schools, those 30 schools that had low achievement, low growth. What are the supports we need to put in place? Are there any, and I know we have this because I've already seen it, we've got classroom teachers in low achievement, low growth schools that got remarkable results on digital content. We've seen that. Okay, so if we know that exists, how do we take that and try to replicate it? How do we share that teacher's story and share those strategies that teacher put in place? And now this is an opportunity for improvement. And this is the slide that really just causes you to pause and recognize where a lot of your efforts and work, and you will see this represented in the district strategic plan. We have an achievement gap. That's not a surprise to you. You've known that from all the data that you've done an analysis around. And you can see that our 2 groups where we have the biggest gap are the Hispanic and the African American. So we definitely have a gap in both achievement and in growth.
This slide and the slide before, is there a connection between the two?
30 schools.
Well, we just got these data that in this format, authenticated, and still, I have questions about why the language was included, but we haven't had a chance to do a deep analysis on that yet. It's work we will do.
So what does a 63 achievement and other mean?
That would mean that students, how they identify, and Laura, if that's not accurate, you just jump right in. This is based on the knowledge I bring with me.
That American Indian is one.
I may not identify with any of those groups.
Pacific
Right, the
Islander.
other is the demographic.
Right.
What does 63 mean?
63% means that the achievement ranges from 35th percentile for African American students to other 63rd to Asian 82.
So 63% of,
That's the percent.
Percentile.
That's the percentile.
Of kids who did not.
They just self-identified as
right.
other.
When you-
I think what I'm getting confused on, does it mean that they scored better than 63% of the other kids who took the test throughout the nation?
Yes, that's exactly what it
Other
means, yeah.
kids who took the nation throughout.
Yeah, you identify as
Who also identified in that
As other.
demographic group. So that means that the students in Charleston County who identified as other, 63% of our students in that category scored better than students in that category in other districts.
Laura?
Or is it in that category?
Kind of, sort of.
Compared to everybody?
Was that,
That group performed at the 63rd percentile. So
Yes.
that group performed better than 63% of others in that
so the
group
Hispanic,
nationally.
those that identified as Hispanic, 39% of our students performed better
No, that can't be
than
right.
other Hispanic students.
No, that can't
No,
be
no.
right. You can't say that our white kids are scoring better than 80-something% of white kids in the nation. You mean
I
better
think
than
it's
all
the,
kids.
I think
In
it's
the
the
84th
median,
percentile.
it's the median percentile for that group.
Right.
Laura, is that accurate?
Yeah, that's right, that was a test.
Okay.
No, you're right, it's
Above
overall,
everybody.
yeah. And that's why you can compare across the groups.
Right, the percentiles relate to
All
the
students.
picture of everybody, all students. When compared to all students across the country, if 10 million kids took that test,
Yes.
Okay.
the kids who identified as other are scoring better than 63% of the 10 million kids
Of all
who
kids.
All
took that
kids.
test.
The kids identified as Hispanic are scoring better than 39% of all the other students who took the test.
Who were at that level.
So let's look at this slide, and this slide breaks it down by ethnicity and by gender. So it's just a further analysis on the same data that you looked at on the previous slide.
Does that mean that women are smarter than men?
Who said that?
Natalie? Anything else on this graph says, but I know it says women are smarter than men.
Yally, there's stories in this data.
Everywhere.
Everywhere.
Not in math.
So our Asian female students scored better than 84% of all the students in their comparison group in the United States.
No, all students. All students.
So not just female, but
Yeah.
male and
Right.
female. So they're 84% smarter than all of them.
Laura, that says achievement and growth percentile, so that means.
Growth is at the bottom, though.
I know that, but that achievement would be like aggregating that group and where they scored, correct?
Yeah.
We need to get that clarification
Yeah.
from the board because that is
Okay.
confusing.
Looks better than the achievement.
We need to make sure we're answering correctly.
Oh, but that's just growth from where you started to.
Right.
But a key part of math is that it'll tell us how the children grew from A to B.
Right.
And that's the part that I think the board can grasp onto and understand.
All right, and so strategic action focus areas, these are lifted right out of that strategic plan. So you can see the data, you see causes for celebration, and you also see opportunities for improvement. The phonics pilot, we know that when students struggle to learn to read, often it's phonics or phonemic awareness. They don't have the sounds, that's phonemic awareness, and they can't correspond the letter sounds, the letter spelling correspondences to those sounds. So we know that, and we know that if students leave third grade not reading on level, they only have a 15% chance of ever catching up. So it's prevention, it's intervention for literacy. You've got to perhaps provide really strong core instruction in the primary grades, early childhood programs, monitor and track, but it's prevention, and then it's intervening if they do have difficulties. What are you going to do? How are you universally screening? How do you decide who's getting an intervention? What are your intervention services? Are they getting them daily? How do you progress monitor? Those are all the things that go into a literacy program. Numeracy curriculum pilot, we clearly have some curriculum alignment issues with math. You don't have results that look like these unless you've got a curriculum issue. The literature's pretty clear on that. So we're piloting some numeracy curriculum. We're going to look at the written, taught, and tested curriculum and make sure it's aligned. And we're also working on instructional strategies, and that's the OGAT training. Blended learning and adaptive digital content, I hope we can spend some time in upcoming board workshops around that, because that is a lever point for differentiation. When I was in the classroom and I taught, I have students, I still see their faces. I taught primary grades and I can see these students. I didn't have the tools to do that. I had 28 students in the room. I had reading groups, and what were the students doing? And we know that really that sweet spot for learning is you're engaged in the content with a high degree of success, right? That's individual and appropriate for you. That's the academic learning time definition. So the beauty of adaptive digital content is it's on your level. You're experiencing a high degree of success, and the teacher can be working with a small group while you're doing something productive in that digital content. That's a major strategy for us. Early childhood, that gets into that prevention and intervention I talked about. Early college, high school, the strategies for supporting students and equipping them with opportunities to take dual enrollment courses and accelerating their learning and providing those supports so they can be successful. New tech and project-based, problem-based learning, that's getting in there and getting involved in the learning. You're actually doing something and you're seeing how it fits with society as a whole. And then least restrictive environments, that's our special education work and some of the work Jennifer Coker's working on, along with Madeline Jacobs. Our virtual school, I referenced the virtual school, that's in the district strategic plan. The district and school level data teams, that will be one of our major strategies. And then the last one is a targeted assistance for identified schools and ongoing monitoring. And part of the data team work will be to identify which schools, and we've already done that. I know that the Learning Services team last year, they have schools they identified for top talent. They know who those are, but we're going to continue to look at data and make sure we don't need to add any other additional schools. But we have some protocols that we'll be looking at for going in, working with a school leadership team, and asking questions that's really designed to coach leaders. For example, how do you know your curriculum's aligned? What are you seeing when you're in classrooms? What does your day look like? You have bell instruction? How are you progress monitoring? Do you have a data wall? All of those are things that we'll be asking when we go in. It'll be a sort of a cross-functional team made up of individuals in learning services, but I'm certain we'll be involving individuals from other departments as well. We're going to be kind of working at that intersection that they talk about in continuous improvement models. I thought it was really important for us to share a timeline of data work, and so that you can see, because again, we think this is one of our major strategies for continuous improvement. Map Insights, the data were authenticated August the 11th. The board Map Insights report and instructional improvement planning overview, that's today. Data team work with principals at August principal meeting. We're thinking this week in our team meeting inside Learning Services, our leadership team, what do we need to focus on? Principals have asked us, what do you think we need to focus on in regards to map data? And our first inclination would be those growth targets. If you can increase the percentage of students meeting their own personal growth target, and yes, we want to accelerate that growth, but if you can just increase the percentage of students that are meeting that growth target, those schools will move. I know it because I have about 20 years of seeing it in multiple settings. We can do that. It's going to be a journey. It's not going to happen overnight, but it can be done. District level data team launch. This again, this is a new process. Maybe there were some, I don't know that there was a district level data team set up the way we're trying to set it up. That's what the teams told me inside Learning Services. So we're going to launch that and look at all that data that's trailing, but then we have to shift at some point and start looking at progress monitoring data that we're collecting on the fly. The targeted assistance launch for schools, I referenced that. The release of district level data as embargoes are lifted and reports are received. One of the things that Laura and I have been talking about is a matrix of data. Okay, here's the data piece. Here's the release date from this. We get it. We get these raw data files, but we can't release it because it's embargoed. And plus we need some time. The state's trying to get their time to figure out what those data say. So a lot of times that's embargoed data. But as soon as those data embargoes are lifted and we can release it, we're going to release it. Because if you have to confront your current reality if you're going to get better. And I need to share this. ACT, that's embargoed to October 9th. But one of the things Laura will be working on is a matrix that lists all those data points and what the release dates are, and work with Erica on, okay, the release happens at 12 o'clock. When do we have that ready, and make sure you've got in, because board members, like, I know, I've never worked for any board, they want to know about the time it hits the paper. They don't want to read about it in the paper. So we're going to be working on those processes to make sure you have the information you need. And then overview of data PK through 12, we're looking at some sample reports that or some sample formatting that we may want to use to give you a high level data overview of what's the current state of the system. And then we're going to be progress monitoring inside Learning Services. There's digital content data. There's the math pilot, the literacy pilot, the phonics pilot we're doing. We can be collecting data on that. So our goal is to reflect, refine, and iterate. Look at what you're getting out of that data, make adjustments as you go, and try to do quick mid-course corrections if we need to provide support. And again, this is a journey. It will not be a quick fix. I don't want to mislead anybody and make people think it's a quick fix, but it's doable.
So, and I know you're not the person to ask this question, but for about 18 months now, we've been learning a concept of how much a kid grew in a year. 1 year's growth, 1.2 years growth. We discussed that, how many kids grew a full year from start to finish based on math. Are we still going to discuss that? Because this has been comparisons to other students, and that's not what we're telling our constituents. We're talking about student growth. You're here, you have 12 sets of 180 days to get them ready for their goal. Here's how many of them grew. Will we get that? So the principals yes, and one of the things that I'm going to be working with the team in Learning Services on this week is the principal said you can get dozens of reports out of MAP, dozens, a plethora of reports, but the principals have said, tell us what it is we need to focus on, what's going to have the biggest impact. And if I think about what that is and the conversations we've had in Learning Services, it's those growth targets. It's what percentage of your students are meeting growth targets.
And how can you support them in that diamond? Think about it. How can you support them so that they all grow? And then how can you track and see who's getting accelerated growth with kids? We should be able to tell which teachers are doing. I know, right over here at Sanders Clyde, right? We had a teacher that had, they used digital content. She did so well. The group that provided the digital content did a story on her and published it on their Facebook page. We have teachers getting accelerated growth. So our goal is to go in there, figure out who that is, and help them replicate and tell their stories.
Well, and that kind of brings up the second question is, we start school on Thursday, and there's an entire group of 6th grade teachers who are going to have children walk into a classroom they've never laid eyes on before. How long before they know exactly where each one of those kids are starting from?
So I can't speak to what processes have been in place, but I can speak to the work we're going to be doing with principals at the principal meeting, and the data, working with the data is a conversation. Probably someone else in the system can answer, what's typically been done, but our goal is to think about data teams and to think about how can we do things with the principals when they come in for their principal meeting and with other groups when they come in for meetings that can be replicated back at their building.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, we only get 12 sets of 180 days, and if the first 14 days of every set of 180 days, we're all waiting to get started. Do we need to back up school? Do we need to ask the state to back up the start date of school so they're not wasted days? I mean, there seems to be a gap between the kid walking in the classroom and us knowing it deeply what each kid is performing at and what that teacher has to do to overcome or augment or continue.
And that is a really great point. Cindy, may I call you Cindy?
I call you Cindy.
Yeah, okay. That's a really great point, and one of the conversations that Laura and I've had is the testing window for MAP going forward. It's set for this year, and but one of the questions I do have is that window conducive? Should we look at that window going forward? I do have that question.
Well, if every child was in the school district last year, those data are there and been passed on, and I can't guarantee that every principal has used those things with teachers, but that was certainly an objective. That's what the new evaluation process will put in place over the monitoring. So, if I could finish out this segment with board members going back to your folders. First of all, we want to thank Cindy Ambrose for that sort of nerve-wracking task that we assigned her for her first meeting covering days of the board. So please join me in thanking her. Much more to come. If the board would like a data workshop, we would be more than happy to have that with you. We'll be ready sometime toward the end of September, but we'd be happy to share that with you.
So what, did you go in the back?
Schedule a workshop.
Is it in the back?
Next in your bold border.
Here, I got one right here. You want this?
They're lying on the
We're on
table.
meeting. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, here,
Chris.
Chris, we got one.
Next in your folder,
Oh, that one doesn't say computer.
This is better than.
I'll get one for you.
It's the
As
same
soon as I
thing.
finish speaking.
It's an inside joke.
Is a sign-up sheet if principals will be presenting school-level data to their constituent boards. We have a schedule here in the event that you would like to attend one of these constituent board member meetings. Please just put your name on here and let us know, because we may need to make some adjustments in the time.
Sorry.
And this is the next sheet
Now,
that's in
if I
this folder. We may need to make some adjustments to the times, and if we know who wants to attend, we'll make sure that you are in the loop. The next thing in the folder I want to call your attention to, which we're going to read as a group. This report is called School District Leadership That Works, the Effective Superintendent Leadership on Student Achievement. This is about what the superintendent and board can do that research shows makes a difference. If you'll leave with me to page 10 of that report, I would just like to call your attention to the chart that's displayed on page 10. I'm looking at this report. It's from McGraw. Anyone can download it. It's called, it's like Waters Marzano from MECREL, MCREL, School District Leadership at Work, the effect of superintendent leadership on student achievement. On that chart on page 10, you see that in that bell curve, the amount of achievement, as much as 10 percentile points, that can be made if the school board and the superintendent are working collaboratively around certain specific activities. So if you keep on reading over to page 15, you'll see the effect size of those things that the superintendent does in conjunction with the board that makes a difference in student achievement. The higher the effect size, the greater the impact. And so an effect size of 0.25 or higher is extremely significant. So the goal setting process, the superintendent involves board members and principals in the process of setting goals. An effect size of 0.33, the highest effect size for leadership. Goals for student achievement and instructional programs are adopted and are based on relevant research, and they are non-negotiable. The third, an effect size of 0.29, board support for district goals for achievement and instruction is maintained. There's board alignment with and support of the district goals. And you see there 6 different activities that the board and superintendent engage in and support each other on. The fourth one, monitoring goals for achievement. We've talked a little about that. The fifth, the alignment of resources to support the goals. And then the sixth, at a pretty high effect size, basically says that you have to run with a centrally adopted and identified curriculum, instructional strategies, expectations, and that principals have flexibility within those recommended patterns. I'm thinking about that diamond that Cindy showed to differentiate, but that there is clearly a district-led instructional direction, and that is a direction in which we are going to recommend that the district move. We've had a whole lot of latitude within the learning communities and at the school level, and there's not always the assurance that resources are spent, that those decisions are made by folks who have a strong background in research, who understand how to evaluate evidence. We have vendor vulnerability. If a vendor walks in the door and shows us the vendor's evidence that their product makes a difference, we aren't necessarily all trained to sort out independent research from vendor statistics. So I just want to point out to you that that's the direction in which I'd like to move the board in setting superintendent goals. We'll spend a whole lot more time talking about this document, and we'll decide if we want to do board development. There's a document for principals. There's a companion document for teachers. So together, these documents identify those activities that teachers, principals, the superintendent, and board, along with the district staff, take that make sure that we have the full impact on student achievement that can be achieved within the system. The biggest impactors on student achievement, research shows, still occur outside the system. But if we do everything we can inside the system, we can make a huge difference in the lives of kids, and that's what we want to push for. So that concludes our presentation to the Strategic Education Committee.
Does anyone have a paper?
I think that's
Let me see if I-
close out unless there are any
Oh, here it is. Grade configuration, was it?
There we already did that.
We already did that, sorry.
Yeah.
Where am I now? We did this.
You're on potential consent, and the only thing for potential consent
Sorry.
would be that grade configuration on the 5A. So we voted on that.
Okay. Shall I read this recommendation for everybody?
Yeah.
Move to open Lucy.
No, we did that already.
Very
We
good
just
day.
needed to move to under D.
Oh, D.
So I make a motion that we
Thank you.
put 5A on the potential consent, since it was unanimously
Second.
agreed to here.
All those in favor? And Any- any opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. Public comments? Okay, so we can adjourn the strategic, who would like to adjourn the strategic?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, that was really interesting.
Good job.